What am I looking at? Oh, I know.
Manet.
You said the topic to end.
No, it's from the previous group.
You want me to set it to the beginning?
Yeah, yes. Where is that?
Yes, yes, I think so.
Should Rick be here? Should be. Are you logged in to that?
Yes.
Can you set it?
Yes.
Thank you.
What do you want me to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to, right away, Rick. I'm gonna wait 2 minutes.
We have,
I see Henning, Martin. Hey.
We doubled the road.
No, we didn't double it yet.
No, we did that. That's doubled the road.
yeah, we did.
Bad.
That's why we need to split the group.
Or merge the group. Okay. Let's go follow. Okay, this is an official Manet IETF meeting, so we are going to use the mics. We are going to state our name. Can I have a note taker? Okay, we have a very small group. There are 4 people in the room, so
And 3 online.
and 3 online. So Lou, you're currently logged in.
I'm on Jabber.
So we'll take turns of looking at the Jabber and replying to comments that come through. The agenda is, we're currently on the agenda. We're going to go, we don't have a note taker, but we're going to use the audio to go back over it, I suppose.
I'll see what I can do.
Okay, just overviews would be nice, and then we can go to the audio. We're going to go to document status really quick. We have DLEP. Yeah.
That's what I would do. My computer has touch like that.
It's better. We have presentations, DLEP presentations from Lou and Rick, and then we're going to have open mic, and the open mic we're probably going to discuss what's going to happen with Manet or the way forward.
Sorry.
Yes. Yes, you may bash the agenda.
So I noticed that there's like 5 minutes of open mic at the end. Can we put in now something about the discussion about the working group and the energy?
Yes.
Everyone here?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That was larger, but we had more presentations show up at the last minute, so that's definitely the topic of open discussion.
I think he wants to have it now.
You want to have that now?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we make it work?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. So you want to move that forward and shorten the presentations.
Yes. Well, so I'm noticing 2 things. That draft is supposed to be developed.
DLEP.
The draft says DNAP. Well, so I noticed two things. One is, the only thing there is DLAP, right, in the agenda.
Yes,
And the other one is, there's only 4 people here.
yes.
So, oh, well, 8 even, so. There's not a lot of people, right? So, I mean, we were talking, you alluded to this at the running area. I'm concerned that I know others are, the level of energy in this group. And it's great that we're doing DLAP. I think DLAP is wonderful. But I think we need to rethink what the working group does, and whether if we're going to be left here or not. And I don't know where else to put it yet, but this is the Manet work,
Right.
and there are charter items on OSR stuff and multicast and other things that this is going to be happening, and so I think we need to look internally and figure out is that going to happen or not? Should we maybe do some work out like DLAP? Maybe we can do something with that's work, since there's also interest on what that moves him as well, for example. Should we move that there? Should we narrow the scope here? Maybe we need to keep the working group open just in case something comes up with OSR. Or what do you guys think?
I'll start first as chair. I think moving DLAP to a different area, if we can get more interaction, would be fantastic.
You say you mean
A different working group, maybe even a standalone working group, or in another working group that it's appropriate to move it to. I think that the energy from DLAP, if it were moved out of the working group, would make this working group kind of go into hiatus. And I think what's left is the multicast work, which we don't have the energy to do right now. And the OLSR maintenance stuff that documents may show up. And I think having a place that people wanting to do extensions on OLSR, where would they bring them and how would that work? And as a group on hiatus, I don't know how that would work, but I think that would be the way I would kind of want it to go. With
right, so I think someone, I'm going to return again. So I think we need a place, just in case something comes up with OSR, because it'll be used and it's relatively new, right? If we had standardized it 10 years ago, maybe by this time, there. So yes, there might be the need to have a place just in case that happens. Something that we don't need to recharter. But again, it worries me that there's not just other topics, right? Because if there were other topics, then that would be great. But as you said, there's the multi-cast stuff, and then we probably have it right now.
Yeah.
Burger. So there's a bunch of issues not related to DLAP. I'm not going to comment on them. I think it's really important to continue the DLAP work. I've talked to a bunch of people that are implementing it. They don't show up with the idea. They have no interest in showing up with the idea. So they're very interested in DLAP. So I think, just because there's a few people here, they're counting on us to keep it moving. So it should happen somewhere. If I don't understand putting it in its own working group because the same people are going to be in the right. So unless it's like a marketing value thing, because it's probably a working group, maybe you'll have more people show up than doubt it. So maybe then it just becomes a name change. I don't get that. But I also, as long as it's working somewhere, I'm fine.
So, sorry, little question for you. So you're familiar with the other work that we've done in CCAN?
Yeah.
Somewhere else, like community related.
No, sorry, they're saying it's hard to hear in the room. So maybe lean in and just do it best they can hear you.
How about that? Can you hear me now?
Ask if they can hear me.
Can you hear me on this microphone?
Yes.
This one? Here, this one works.
And this one, yeah, this one works. Okay.
Why don't we sit down and just pass around the mic?
Well, we have an alternate meeting. We can now report we did a successful experiment. Yes. Justin, seriously,
Yeah.
come on. I forgot what I was going to say. Can I say my
About
point?
the DLAP in its own work.
Rick Taylor, I three quick points. Point number one is that Stan Ratliff also is very keen in seeing the DLIP work going forwards. He can't make it for personal reasons. He's going to hopefully check the minutes, so that's one extra person in the room who isn't visible at the moment. The other point was about SMF. I was sat in the Mbone PIM meeting on Monday morning, and they're just about to start looking at things that SMF solves. So there is a place for that SMF work if Manet was to boil off in some way. So there's a home for that. And the third thing was a +1 to Lou's comment about industry really wants DLEP to happen. So although they're not here, I bet half of them are A, are on the audio stream, and B, they're just constantly coming to people who sat in this room saying, how's it looking? When's this extension happening? When's that happening? Is it done yet? Is it done yet? Is it done yet? So is DLEP, is it done yet? Is it done yet? Can I have my extension yet? You know, there are people who are, you know, industry has really woken up to it and are planning it for big, expensive projects.
So, no, but so first thing first, yes, DLIP has to happen. I mean, that's the only thing that we have experience in. Now we got 1, 2, 3, the sixth person here, which is great. Okay, 9 people here. So it's great. I mean, DLIP needs to happen, and now that we have, you know, probably other synergies, because there were probably people there who listened and said, oh, that's probably cool. Maybe they didn't come here for whatever reason, but I'm hoping that we would maybe get to 10 in the room, right? Or, something like that.
Babel is also happening concurrently.
Oh, Babel is also happening right now, and that's probably a good user
Yes.
of DLEP
Yes.
as well, right?
Well, and it's similar work. I mean, I had to convince one of the people in the room because he wanted to go to Babel.
Right.
There are probably people in that room who otherwise would have been here, so it's an unfortunate conflict.
Right. So, okay, so we've been talking about, and I'm just, making this up as we go, and eventually whatever we think we agree on, we can go and talk to the other IDs and whatever. So, yeah, DLIP needs to continue. I agree that just changing the name. No.
We do, but we're after.
Yes.
We're getting to that.
So yeah, DLIP needs to continue. I agree that just changing the name and saying this is now the DLIP working group, we're probably going to end up in the same place. Well, okay, that may be one option. The other option is to put it somewhere else, and maybe Babel. Yeah, they are using it. I don't know. They said today that they're finishing their main draft. I don't know if that would work. The other option is, of course, to say RTWG. Now it's like 5 or 6 drafts. I don't know if RTWG really has the bandwidth to take that on, and if it's going to get completely diluted and lost.
You
And
could move it into CCAMP.
we could move it to CCAMP.
Because they have LNP. The one thing is that we've actually had, when we've met, we've had hugely productive meetings because we're so focused.
Mhm.
So one thing, if we moved it into CCAMP, instead of having an hour of really good high volume exchange and making progress, we'd get like 10 or 15 minutes to make a report. So I'd be a little concerned about that.
So that's the same as moving it to RTWG or some other working group that is busy.
But there's at least some synergy there. So, I mean, I think they own LNP,
Who?
CCAMP.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they own LNP. So, and it's a very similar protocol. It's just that the space is a little different.
Right.
So it sort of would make sense to combine it there from a technology standpoint, but from a time standpoint, I think we'd really lose out.
I would like to suggest maybe we try it for moving it to CCAMP for a session, have a joint session to see how it would work, to see if people are interested, to see if that work would be something that they would want to take on, and if we want to, as a working group, would want to move it there, and not make it a permanent thing to start, but move it over there and see how that works as a joint session.
Wait until after finish?
Yes.
Can we wait until after
That's
we
it.
finish the current extensions?
Rick Taylor. The 2 points. Firstly, quickly back to Lou. I think some of these extensions may take a while because we're sort of finding our feet. I know you're very keen to see your extensions make progress, but I also know there are others who would like to pull on the reins a little bit on these. Going back to the point of my presentation in the open meeting was that DLEP has applicability outside of Manet, and my reservation for keeping it under the Manet umbrella is people who want to use it and say, but I'm not a Manet. I care about data center, where I think it has use. Names are important. I know it's very easy to forget, but actually they are important.
Okay, channeling Jabber. Henning says, and we will get more extensions before the current ones are finished. I think responding to what I was saying.
Right, so we can't finish. So if we wait until we finish some extensions, we're going to get more and more and more and never do anything. Yes, agreed.
Ron Intveld. I'm actually concerned about the mission creep with DLAP. It's going way beyond what it was originally intended for. So I would like to see it used in the context of Manet, primarily. I was also hoping for the multicast work to happen in Manet. It hasn't happened so far, although I've heard rumors that there's something going on at several places, but it's not being brought here.
The SMF stuff,
SMF or whatever it was called.
the forwarding information based
Forwarding
stuff.
information based
Yes.
stuff. Yes. I was not in a position to lead that in any way, but I was hoping to sort of jump on the bandwagon.
So that's kind of Justin Dean, chair. We have progress on our end. We have software working. We have some minor things written, but our problem is getting it released. And I mean, I can't. It's a frustrating position to be in, but I can't really say we have anything because we can't bring anything at this time. So with that in mind, if somebody else can, that would be fine. But we don't have the cycles right now, or not the cycles. We don't have the ability to bring forward the work, which is unfortunate.
There will be a research group starting up probably next year that is heavily interested in that kind of work. So keeping it alive would be good for that group, which I am likely to participate in. You know who they are. You were somewhat connected to the predecessor of this group, IST 124.
So how about if we do this? This is Alvaro again. How about if we have that joint meeting next time and see, what other synergy we get there, and maybe other people commenting, participating, whatever. I don't really want to stretch this too long if we have no other work, right? So I'm happy to do one more cycle and meet together and see what happens there, and maybe between here and there we make some progress on these drafts, et cetera. After the next meeting or right before, something around there, we make the decision of what we're going to do with Manet as itself, right? And after the joint meeting, we can make a decision: do we spin it off? Now we have enough interest. Do we move it to CCAM? What do we do at that point?
We're back to one mic. It does mean that we're going to lose this sort of smaller, high volume exchanges moving to another working group. And that's a management call of whether or not we, as an organization, whether the ISG wants to have a small group that cares about one particular thing. But it's really nice not to be in these big meetings where we just are doing reports and, we have 5 to 10 minute, maybe 15-minute slots where we really are doing 2 or 3 minutes of discussion, and this is very refreshing to be in this group where we go through points and have really nice discussions.
I really understand. What we probably want to do with the CCAM people is, approach the chairs and all that stuff. I don't know how long CCAM met this time. full session was how long?
Yeah, but I mean, they, like, there's times
All I was gonna say is.
I used to chair the, this is Lou, I used to chair the group. I mean, there were times where we had slots that were 7 and 8 minutes because we just had so much stuff on the agenda. And, it was brief reports on here's where we are and here's what we're doing and we'll talk about it next time. And,
Okay, so we need to, Alberto, again, we need to figure out the logistics. And I don't know if, getting 2.5 hours or whatever, or if we do another session that is actually the joint session, they have their own session and then we have another one. I don't know. Because see, the thing is, I like the fact that we're making progress. However, because this could have other applications and everything else, maybe we're losing out on that. And I sort of feel like what you said, that maybe the name matters. And then, this gives us the opportunity to at least another cycle, and then we make the call. Because if we need to move multicast out, for example, and put it in PIM, right? Even though you're going to have interest, et cetera, then we need to do something. Because if there's nothing else that's going to come here, because we can't disclose it or we can't do anything, we need to put the working group to sleep or make some other decision.
Justin, Dean, you mentioned moving PIM out or moving the multicast stuff out, and
And I just mentioned that just to be clear, because I know, as you said, there's interest there in pretty much the same topic. So if there was activity here, I could tell them, hey, let's come do it here, right? But if there's no activity here, then
my reservation would be their focus in the PIM working group with regards to how wireless works and getting that right. I don't think that would be their focus.
no,
It is?
exactly
Okay.
what they said. Sorry, I'm off the mic. It's exactly what was said.
Exactly what they said on the mic was really caring about the link layer properties, specifically looking at 802.11 to start with. But I had the real feeling they were about to start reinventing SMF from the ground up. They were really looking at the RF properties of the links, and I was just sitting thinking, this is the SMF work, and there was real energy in the room to get it done, and that worried me slightly.
at some point, Henning would like to get back to At some point, Henning would like to get back to the feature discussion. So he has a question on feature creep. So we don't want to lose that in your reorg, but we should get back to that at some point.
Okay, Ron Infeld. I was also thinking about IP Wave, which is currently concentrating on one hop situations for communication between vehicles and infrastructure, but may at some point come to the conclusion that they also need multi-hop. Not now, but maybe later.
Yeah, so when that was being chartered, I made that point because they wanted to, in the charter, include the possibility of multi-hop. And, that sounds too much like routing to me. I mean, one hop, I can do one hop and one hop and one hop and, do routing. But yes, I think that's a good point as well, because we could, that and Manet in general just gels together, so that could work.
Is that a better candidate for a joint meeting for DLEP? IP Wave?
Not now, I think.
Although it would be worth.
It would be worth exploring that with, I think Russ and someone else are the chairs for that.
All right, this is reading from Henning. I think it's in response to Arnold's comment earlier. DLEP for layer 3 radios is the addition thing that is happening. Do we have other feature creep beyond this?
I said, I hope I said, it was a feeling, not based on very hard facts, but I need to go read all your drafts, and then I'll come back to this. So forget it for now.
Yeah, there are certain things like multi-hop control. That's a question of whether that's an extension or not. The credit piece is was always there and was split out originally. So that I would push back on, but the other pieces make sense. It's a good question. I personally
No,
also
no
think
problem
that,
with the credit piece and the queue control and all that.
So I'd like to kind of wrap this discussion up so we can get to the presentation so we can talk about the technical issues. I guess the way forward right now is we're going to look for a joint session. I'll talk with Alvaro and Stan and come up with some suggestions. If you guys have other suggestions, write them on the mailing list and we'll try to do that for next go round. General consensus, I'm seeing heads. Yeah, it's a management thing, but I'd like to have feedback as well. I got your Lou's feedback was he likes a small group of getting things done. So
Yes, it's important to keep the the time, the ability to do the work together as well.
Rick Taylor again. I think something has to change. I don't know what, but I'm in favor of changing something because I take Lou's point about a small focus group is great. It's like a little private design team meeting, but and yeah, it's really productive, but it's purely focused on the minutiae of DLEP at the moment. And is that what Manet is about? So I don't know what the solution is, but I'm for some change in some way.
yeah, it's Lou. I'm okay, completely okay with doing an experiment. I don't want to come off of saying don't do anything. My question is do we do 2 experiments? Because it sounds like the routing pieces, there's good synergy with one group, while the DLEP may be a different group. So you might want to think about doing an experiment with 2 parts.
Yeah, well, I think right now we focus on DLAP because that's the active work. If we had other active work, then maybe we can think about something else. Right.
So on to the presentation.
From Henning, multicast routing is hard because we lack good OS support for it. Maybe joining with PIM might be a way to tackle this. So I think this is similar to the same comment about working with 2 different groups. And Henning, you can come in, if you have a mic, you can just join through Meet Echo. Henning, do you have a mic? He's going to try.
Lou? I can drive for you and I can look at that.
Did someone else jump onto Jabber? Oh, you'll take my computer. Yeah, that works. For some reason, I don't have a monitor in front of me. Oh, that works.
Switch with you.
I'll do this.
Well, that's not plugged in. I put it on this mine, not this one.
There's here. Well, I have a bunch of extensions to talk about. At least go one more slide.
Yeah.
Thanks. So we have 4 extensions, we have 4 extensions we've been working on. They've all been updated. These slides are actually out of date. We did another update since this.
Oh, I can try to get it.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
So we pushed out an update. There were a bunch of comments. We did a quick update to try to capture all the comments. I feel like there was one there was one comment that hasn't been addressed, but it's actually discussed in the slides. So we'll cover that one. As a reminder, there's actually code out there, and we've been talking about open source. So
It's Rick Taylor. Just jumping in. Vicky's actually sent a pull request to David with some updates for your DLAP code for 8175 complete. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's not my code. I haven't done anything with it. Right. But you said your code, and I'm just okay. Actually, I have nothing to do with it. So, but that's awesome. Hopefully, he looks at it and does something with it. So we've had some good discussion on latency range, and in particular, the question is whether or not we should make this a generic thing. Excuse me. Let me go back and forth. So some of the good discussion has been whether it would make it a generic thing. And the answer we gave the last time, which is the same answer I brought up again, is that if we ended up making it generic, we would have to have some sort of subfield inside the data item to identify which what metric the range applied to. And to me, that seems like what we're doing is just doing the same thing that we have a data item type already to do. And if the number space itself was scarce, it would make sense to do two levels of dispatch, so to speak. So I still think it doesn't make sense. I think it makes sense to do a metric range on a per data item basis, rather than have a generic field which then had another field inside it that said the metric type. We just have the data item type say what type of metric it is. So the same range approach could be taken for any metric, and when doing so, we're going to share. When doing so, you would just change the data item type for that new range.
Okay, Rick Taylor, you have convinced me to go in this direction, but I think your logic is wrong. If there was a sub-data item type in the range extension, then there'd be a single data item type at the top level saying this is a metric min-max TLV, data item, sorry. And the subcode would be the same code as defined by the metric. So, and I can't remember the numbers off my top of my head, but whatever CDR data item type is, there wouldn't be an explosion in number space. You'd have, where M is the number of metric data items, you'd have M plus 1, because you're adding one extra data item type. Whereas in your example, for every data item type that you want a min and a max, you've then got 2M, because you're having to add a second data item type. So I think that logic's flawed, but I can see where you're coming from.
I think we're somehow talking past each other, but violently agreeing. I think we're okay. The one thing about what you're saying is that we'd have to consider how do you indicate the support, and you would end up still with an additional extension. So you really haven't bought much. So I think we've ended up in the same place, even if our logic is identical and we're just talking past each other, or for completely different reasons, we're in agreement. That's the high order bit. The other open issue is whether or not we want nanosecond range versus microsecond range. We use microseconds because that's what's in base DLAP. And frankly, Henning proposed it. Doesn't matter to me. So whatever we think makes sense.
Comment from Henning. What happens if we start to add smoothed over time or variance TLV? One for each metric type?
Sounds right. I mean, do you want min-max variance? Is that what you want now? What are you, Henning, can you make a specific proposal of what you'd like to see? And maybe join the room and let's try your mic out. He can't get in, or?
He tried, but he wasn't able to get the mic working.
It's a local problem.
Oh, we see you now. You can try now.
Can you hear me? One,
Yeah.
two, three. Ooh, okay.
Welcome.
It was just me misusing the program. And the point is that this min-max is some kind of statistics over an existing metric type. And there are other important or maybe even interesting forms of statistics the radio could supply. So we have this type explosion. We have at the moment, if we do min-maxing for all metrics, we would have 2M metrics. If we say, yeah, we want to have the variance, because variance is something important. We want to know if this value is stable or if it's fluctuating back and forth or on this normal average we know. Then we have a third for each metric. So the idea having some kind of generic statistics TLVs that refer back to an existing metric type and say, yes, I'm providing minimum maximum boundary for this metric. I'm providing a calculated variance or a moving average for some kind of metric. This might be something we should think about, because otherwise the TLV space and the amount of RFCs we need to define them gets quite large.
Well, we do have 2 to the 16 values available, so we have enough space. And if we are defining these each in their own thing, then we're going to need an extension for each. So even if we don't have, we're not filling up our data item space, we will be filling up our extension space, which I think is also 2 to the 16. So I'm not sure we're really buying anything by doing this second level index. What I do think would be interesting is, if you think we should be at this point adding something like variance or adding other parameters next to our min max, or we should discuss that. And if you have some specific proposals, perhaps add them to this draft.
Justin Dean, I think given the amount of space we have and the requirements for different metrics wanting this right now and not knowing them, it seems over-engineering to design it in a way that Henning had mentioned. And I'm kind of with Lou in that you define a new data item type that has the min-max in it, and yeah, it's ×2, but most metrics will define what that metric needs, and not all metrics are going to need the same things. They're going to need their own different kind of variance, and they'll mean different things to different metrics. So I think trying to design one to solve them all at this point is unnecessary.
Rick Taylor, the reason I came round to liking this as a single data item type was actually nothing to do with the explosion in number space. It was to do with the fact that as you start to dip into statistical data on a variation of metrics, you start to lead away from the DLEP model of timely information about the change of metrics, and you start to go into, oh, well, I can just tell you for the lifetime of this session, it's going to be min this, max that, standard deviation of this, and not get that real-time reporting. And I think it could lead to a precedent of that's the correct way to implement your DLEP. It's become obvious to me over time, talking to implementers, that guidance on how to do this properly is very important, because there's always a bit of wiggle room in a protocol, and we have to be careful, particularly with metric reporting, that we don't allow people to use it in ways we didn't want them to.
Okay. How much time do I have?
Not much. I was looking that up right now.
Okay, because there are a few points that I think are really important that I want to make sure to get to. So one is, I'm going to do this really quickly. How many think we should stick with nanoseconds? How many think we should stick with microseconds? This isn't voting. This is just to get a feel for whether people have opinions.
My only objection to nanoseconds, Rick Taylor, is that the raw latency metric is in microseconds, and then someone will say, oh, I can use this because I want a nanosecond latency. Is that okay with people? Because I can bet someone will say, I need nanoseconds, so I'll set my min and max to the same value.
Okay, so presumably, Henning, and you can speak up if you disagree, you like nanoseconds because you're the one who proposed it. Who sort of likes, again, just getting a feel, who likes nanoseconds? Nano. So Henning, do you like nano, or or are you just thinking about it? You just left the room. You could have just started talking.
Okay, I'm not. I suggested nanoseconds because we have a huge space, 64 bits. I think yeah, 64 bits in nanoseconds is still a 3-digit year, so enough for even interstellar communication. And I see radios where the timing already slipped into the sub-microsecond area, where we say, yes, we see LTE and the success of LTE, and they are talking about, yeah, they want to guarantee 1 millisecond range, and it's microsecond, and they have some timings that are already sub-microseconds. So do we really want to say, yeah, that all these timings, they are just 1 in our metric because we cannot encode them, and we don't need the upper 16 bits of the value we are transmitting anyways. So we are wasting, we can afford to waste a few bytes in DLAP. That's not a problem, but we don't lose much by defining a value like latency in nanoseconds. We still have all the range we need, and we will not be in a trouble when 60 gigahertz or 120 gigahertz radio communication arrives.
We're a little tight on time, so.
Yep, sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
I think you made your point.
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of consistency within a protocol, but I think you've also made a compelling point. I look to the chair to see what we should do.
Does anyone object vehemently to nanoseconds?
Rick Taylor, I don't object to nanoseconds if there is clarification in the document on how you use the microsecond latency data item in core DLAP alongside this nanosecond value.
I look forward to your proposed text and a new co-author. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
All right, DLAP multi-hop forwarding. So we've had a point that we have reserve fields because they look nice on paper. Who cares? We're over TCP. Do we really need them? I think that's fine to strip them out. I think I already did it actually. So yeah, let's kill those. And there was also a correction on what message type to carry it in. I think I already made that change. I might have actually published this with that removed. I just it's been a long week. I did it on Monday morning. So we'll strip that. So control plane based pause. We remember what this was all about. It's a way of on a per DSCP basis to say, hey, stop, don't send. The reason we're doing this versus, let's say, something like Ethernet pause or PFC is that you can pause on a per destination basis. So we did a little bit of a change, a reformatting to support the concepts that of containers from Rick. This was discussed in 98. I believe we actually published it before 99 and did a little bit of a review. Oh, I think I did. We have some informational element, and then basically an array of queue items, and each queue indicates the number of DSCPs. We've had some discussion on the list. One thing was, do we need both pause and credit? My view is these are different use cases. We have some simple systems and some complex systems, and so based on that scenario, we would have a radio or modem that would support one or the other. I don't really expect a system to ever do both.
Can I ask a quick question, Rick Taylor? What is the difference between pause and a credit window with one token in it?
I think pause is a mechanism already in the Ethernet driver to define, please stop talking for some fixed time, if I'm correct. Yes, no?
No, we're not talking about using Ethernet pause.
Oh, sorry.
This is control plane based pause. The Ethernet pause is possible. We don't need to actually specify anything to do that. I think the big difference is sort of the complexity around managing a credit window. From an effective, from the bandwidth on the wire, it'll be the same. The big difference from a theoretical standpoint is credit should be work conserving while pause is not. So pause, you basically say, there may be gaps on your wire, on your media with pause, but it's really simple to implement. So that, I can understand why you'd want to do credit over pause, but I also understand the complexity of pause, the complexity of credit.
Well, and I would comment, Justin Dean, I would comment that having two separate drafts, if somebody were to implement something and they wanted something simple, they would not do the credit and they might do the pause extension. Right. So that, in terms of getting it out there and getting people who want to say, hey, can you do this for me? And they say, yes, I can. I support this RFC. I support this feature versus I support credit, but only with one window. That's a little, you're not going to ask anyone to do that.
Question about pause and credit. Can we have a text that describes how to implement pause with the credit TLVs, saying this is a valid, simple approach using the credit TLVs to define something like pause, because this whole credit window is too complicated. We want the more binary stuff. I must admit, I've not completely read.
So there was a proposal try to unify the mechanisms as much as possible. We've done that. We haven't. I have a proposal how to do that, and that's what's on the screen. It's not quite what you just said, because it's not a zero credit or a small credit. That still requires full mechanism implementation. Rather than do that, we can use some commonality of a common traffic classification data item, which is the same thing that we already have in the other document, where we have a traffic classification identifier, we have the diff-serve identifier, and then we have this thing called a flow identifier, which is common, which really helps give you the information that we're doing pause instead of credit. And so we can unify it. It is a little bit more complex. It does increase the complexity of pause, but it also means there's commonality. So if you were writing a common stack, it's nice. If you're trying to understand both, it's nice. If you're only doing pause, you've made it more complex. So the simple case is a little more complex to understand. The reality is, I don't know. So I personally am fine with this. It works pretty nicely. I didn't go and change the draft to do this. I thought it was important to discuss it. But, you know, it's certainly very doable.
Rick Taylor again. I was really hoping you were going to do this. I was going to ask you if you had thought about doing this, because I could see so much commonality between the two. And some of the list discussions with Henning about, well, can we start talking about flow IDs in terms of metrics and so on, all starts to drop out of this. Yeah. The question might be, and this is one for the chairs, is do we want to talk about flow IDs in their own document to just talk about flow IDs that then pause can refer to, and crediting can refer to, and metrics can refer to?
So I'm trying to find if I did that slide. No, I didn't do a slide on that. So we certainly can do that. And I think we should get agreement on the mechanisms, and once it's done, look at it and say, all right, do we want to break the documents up or not? And then sort of treat that as a document formatting problem. I would be fine having a base document, another one's referring to, a common document, another referring, or one that says, go use this information element from this other document. So either approach works for me. You just have to decide. But let's get the technical details work and then decide how to break it apart.
One comment about these drafts, which might also support pushing the flow ID stuff out of the draft. And a problem that I notice is that DSCP might be IPsec protected. So it cannot be the radio that says, oh, you have to use these DSCP values to address my queues. It must be the router to tell the radio, oh, you have this queues, I want to assign the following DSCPs to it, because DSCP is an end-to-end fixed value. So it is defined by the policy of the network.
So I think I disagree with that statement, but There's a related comment that supports the same conclusion, which is what happens if I want to do my traffic classification using some other fields? And by having a common thing that you can refer to, we will reuse the same components. The way the credit is currently designed, and that's what my nice animation is all about. You got to go look at that slide 11. I like that animation. But it is basically saying that our credit control is now completely separated from our traffic control. And so that you can reuse the identical traffic control mechanisms when we use a new traffic classification, when we use new identifiers of the traffic. So we could certainly break this apart actually into 4 documents if we want. So
So
at
it's
some
not
point,
too
we're going to
bad.
have to decide how many documents. But let's get the details right. I think credit window is in much better shape than it was the last time. I think it implements everything except it doesn't have this new name. The items in blue are the new names. Right now, they're called CIDs, and we'll just change them to flow IDs. So that'll be a change that I'll do afterwards, and then we can decide whether or not we're ready to go. The one thing there, we still have an open issue. I really wanted to discuss this. We don't have time, so we'll have to take it to the list. So please look at slide 13 in this package and discuss on the list, have some good suggestions on how we should deal with router limits. That's the one real open issue on the document.
Rick Taylor, very quick response to Henning. Henning, your comment about the router being able to tell the modem what queues to assign, I consider that management and configuration and out of the scope of DLAP. I think the radio should report back to the router what it has been configured to do. DLAP is never a management protocol, and we need to push back against suggestions to put management in.
Well, I think we'll have some arguments in the next
Yeah,
batch of
I-
extensions, but that's okay. Let's get these ones done.
I don't know that that's, yes, I'm with, we'll have discussions on that.
Yes, we should.
Yes. Clicker. Did he turn that off?
Is this the dead one?
No, he just turned it off. Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
The battery's dead.
Here you go.
Okay, I'll keep it quick because I'm probably short on time. DLAP link identifiers. So try the clicker if it works. Yes, it does. Okay, so what's the problem? The problem is that DLAP, as it currently stands, requires a contiguous layer 2 domain. Okay, so your MAC address is used as your identifier for your DLAP destination, and it has to be a valid MAC address, which is good in general, but there are an increasing number of use cases where this is a problem. Number one, layer 3 radios. They exist. Some of us may think that that is not the right way to do your meshing, but they exist. So let's support them. So in the case of a layer 3 radio, the MAC address of the destination is just not a reachable MAC. It's not valid. The other example is also interesting, which is where you've got a wireless link to some sort of infrastructure. So your radio link is in an access point mode. So you're either on the far end of a 3G LTE style connection where there isn't another end DLAP router, but there's definitely a link you want some information about, or 802.11 access point. So the solution to this, I propose, is a new identifier that goes alongside the MAC address data item. Those who read the earlier drafts, I was replacing the MAC address data item. I was convinced that was a silly idea. So there is a new data item that effectively parameterizes that MAC to say, beyond the MAC address in this message, there are one or more links that have different capabilities. So these are just called link IDs. Key points are they are opaque. You cannot read any meaning into them. They are invented by the modem as it sees fit. They're 32-bit, that's plenty, because they're not meant to be anything. Lou has a question. That
Yeah,
mic doesn't.
so your original proposal had variable length.
Yeah.
With variable length, you can do a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
I would suggest that either you put a maximum length or go with one of the proposed alternatives on the list, which was to have a per session value. Basically, it's based on the implementation.
They are per session. They're not unique. They're not persistent. They are per session,
I'm
and they are
sorry.
per
The
destination.
The length was per session. So it was one of the proposals on the list. My suggestion is
my problem with that, I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep it quick, is that involved a negotiation step, which I have managed to avoid.
so make it fixed but selectable. So the field is variable and implementation does one value.
Let's argue this on the list.
Yeah, I think 32-bit. If you're just doing 32 bits, this becomes uninteresting.
Okay. Just to clarify through these points, link IDs are unique per MAC address. So if you've got two links at each of the egress points of the layer 2 domain, they can all be called 1 and 2 because your destination ID is the tuple of MAC plus link at that MAC.
There are many examples in routing where we use the routing protocol to distribute some information that comes from that's learned from an attached station or is learned from something else, and it's distributed through a routing protocol.
Mm-hmm.
To some degree, DLEP is a simplified routing protocol. So,
Careful.
sorry, heresy. I mean, I like it, but so we have a lot of experience doing that type of thing, and that's what you were bringing in with lids, and that was great. But 32 bits isn't enough.
Okay, I'm happy to discuss that and make changes. I just picked a number because I was running late on time. Critical thing is if you're using the layer 2 data items, you've got to include some layer 2 information, otherwise they're entirely useless. So you must have an IP address or a subnet. It's quite conceivable to advertise where your default route lives. You can say, I only have one destination and it's the internet. So I have the MAC address of the last hop in the layer 2 and a single lid which could be value 0 and an attached subnet data item of 0/0.
Are you saying layer 3 is required with the use of lids? I thought that was
For the two use cases I have provided, you need to have layer 3 information because I'm solving the layer 3 problem by using lids. If you can think of a use case of using lids,
Sure, absolutely.
then okay, we can relax that.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
I suggest check the text in the document and see if
Yeah,
my musts are in the wrong place.
Maybe I missed that from an earlier version. I don't know.
Right, okay. I think this is getting pretty complete, and I'd like working group adoption is the short answer, because it's still my individual draft.
Are people interested in the document? So Lou, yes. Vicky, yes.
I know there's external interest
So
in doing this
I
as well.
think that's, we'll look for comments on the list, but yes, that looks like something we can do.
Brilliant, thank you.
And since we finished on time, 2 minutes left. If anyone wanted to say anything else, we switched around the agenda, but I think it went well as could be. No, enjoy the rest of the IETF and see comments on the list.
We just finished.
Beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I got a new one.
Yeah, so I missed it. Was it months before?
It wasn't even mentioned. We did.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Well, something else I was typing it through. I got this.
Very close.
You know,
Very
I've worked
close,
with
isn't it,
users
Alfred?
before, I suddenly realized, you can say, oh, it's
Thank
all about
you.
discussion, and then
It's like, yeah, here's pretty close.
That's actually it.
But here's the canonical.
This is it.
That's good because microphones are dying left and right.
Sorry about this.
Oh, you just want to have an idea.
You guys just look at those. Oh, just there, didn't I? Thank you.
It's the TMS.
Lovely.
This is the one that's going to be.
I know, you want to.
But.
Right,
Yeah.
you don't even need it. It gives you the name.
That's a camera. Yeah.
video.
I mean, but that's just an example. So I
No, no,
actually,
sorry,
I actually,
you've lost.
The
I
end
want
of
end
it.
lids. I want end lids.
You want end lids?
I want end lids.
No, a lid identifies a unique destination which has its own metrics.
Yes.
You want to have.
Do you
a
have
lid-
notes?
Oh,
You take
Google.
notes too? Notes. No. Excellent.